Today is a bonus episode talking all about why International Women's Day is brilliant and why it's something we can all celebrate and something we should all celebrate. But I also want to highlight why it frustrates me and actually why sometimes it makes me a little bit sad. Now, while most of what I discuss today will focus on how we as women can support and uplift each other, I also want to touch on something that's much wider than that, the reality of how far we still have to go as a society. The fight for equality, respect and safety for women goes far beyond just supporting each other and posting a nice quote once a year. It's about tackling the systems and the mindsets that still oppress us and still hold us back. But before we dive in, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to tune in to Show Up and Be Heard, the podcast that exists to help women like you simplify your business and your life so that you can stop feeling so overwhelmed. I am your host, Becci McAvoy, owner and founder of Be Heard Socials, and I am an award-winning social media marketer and international speaker who specialises in content strategy and organic growth on social media. Through this podcast, as well as through my own social media, email community, and my award-winning membership, the Boss Your Socials Club, my mission is to cut through the noise to make social media marketing accessible and easy to understand for businesses that can't afford to outsource or who don't have the teams required to implement most of the advice that is being given to them. So if you want to cut through the noise and the BS to get practical, actionable advice tailored specifically to make social media marketing accessible and easy to understand, or if you want to be part of a supportive community where women entrepreneurs can feel connected and inspired to achieve their dreams, then keep listening because you are in the right place. To get more tips like the ones you hear in this podcast, make sure you join my email community through the link in the show notes. All right then, let's get started with this bonus episode. I love International Women's Day. I love the conversation it sparks, the way it shines a light on incredible women, and how it encourages businesses and communities to reflect on how they can do better. Like a lot of the time, it really lights me up and can give me a real buzz. But if we're serious about gender equality, then supporting women isn't just for one day a year, and we can't just wait for the 8th of March to roll around before we start paying attention. I know that I feel like that feminist killjoy party pooper at the moment. I genuinely debated putting this episode out, but I've been getting irritated by it recently, and I thought, do you know what? I'm just going to do an episode. You can let me know. I will say my piece, and you can let me know what you think about it. And the reason I've been getting irritated about it is because supporting women shouldn't be confined to one day a year. And let's be honest, really honest with ourselves. Right now, it mostly is. I'm not saying it wholly is. It absolutely wholly isn't, but it mostly is if we are really honest with ourselves. And not only that, there's a huge chunk of it that is hugely performative, especially around International Women's Day. And do you know what? Whilst we're on the subject of things that are irritating me, and this is some of the stuff I've been thinking recently as I've seen stuff about, and this isn't aimed at anything specific that I've seen. I think it happens every year with International Women's Day. But this irritates me year round. It really frustrates me when women supporting women becomes more of a buzzword and empty words rather than an actual commitment. And I don't know. I've been thinking that a lot about International Women's Day this year. Now, this isn't to say, like I said in the intro, I love International Women's Day. I think it's something that can be celebrated, should be celebrated. I think it's brilliant for so many reasons, but it does frustrate me sometimes, and it does make me a bit sad. And I've been feeling that quite a lot this year. And yeah, so I see it all the time, right? Businesses, brands, even individuals shouting about how they support women. But when you look a little closer, it's more about sounding good than actually doing good. And honestly, that helps no one. It literally helps no one. And like I said, it just annoys me. I hope this isn't just going to turn into a soapbox rant. But that is why I decided to do this bonus episode. I wasn't actually planning to until quite last minute. But I want to talk about how we can make supporting women more than just lip service, how we can actually do the work every day in ways that are practical, in ways that are meaningful, and honestly, which I'm all about, in ways that are pretty simple. So how do we actually support women beyond just saying the words? And this is as well, when I say this isn't just about women supporting women, although it's a bit of that. It's also about how men can support women, how anyone can support women, basically. So the first one up, and I debated putting this first, but I am going to start with it. Pay women for their expertise, because Like, let's say it louder for those at the back. Exposure doesn't pay the bills. If you admire a woman's work, don't just tell her, hire her, book her services, buy from her business, and don't try to haggle her down or make her feel bad for charging what she charges. Buying from women led businesses isn't just good for that business owner, although it is great for that business owner. It has a ripple effect on families, communities, and future generations. It makes such a difference. So, yeah, if you can, if you're in the position to, and if it's something you need, pay women for their expertise and invest in them. And if you can't, that moves me on to my second point. If, for whatever reason, if you can't, amplify women's voices. So if you see a woman doing something amazing, talk about it, share their work, recommend them, tag them when someone is looking for what they offer. Use the platforms that you have, no matter how big or small those platforms are, to lift other women up, because visibility matters. And sometimes all it takes is one introduction or one share to open doors for them. And the important bit of this is do it when she's not in the room. And like, do it when she's not in the room. Talk about her when it's a room full of opportunities, not just when it looks good for you publicly or when it benefits you in some way. So, yeah, pay women for their expertise and amplify their voices. Those are my first 2 points. My third point is challenge everyday sexism and call out inequality when you see it. So whether it's calling out unfair treatment in the workplace or at networking events or just anywhere in business or life, it doesn't have to be in business, whether it's pushing for equal pay or simply correcting someone when they interrupt a woman mid-sentence, which happens all the time. Like, I get it. This can be uncomfortable, but whether it's in a meeting, a group chat, or even in a casual conversation, if something isn't there, speak up and say something. Like, I know it's uncomfortable, but speak up and say something. We all have a role to play in changing the culture around us. And these small actions really, really do add up. And it really means something to the woman that you're speaking up for. So, yeah, challenge everyday sexism and call out inequality when you see it, however uncomfortable you might feel doing that. Okay, number 4, support the right kind of conversations. It's not just about cheerleading, it's about having real, sometimes difficult conversations, encouraging women to set boundaries, even when it negatively affects you. Like, say, for example, you're working with another woman, like, encourage her to have boundaries, even if, like, it would be easier for you if she didn't. Because let's be honest, 9 times out of 10, it is easier for us if people don't have boundaries. But encourage her to set those boundaries and then, like, enable her to stick to them. Don't make her feel bad about them. Talk about burnout, address the inequalities that we face. Just support the right kind of conversations, have the conversations, share the conversations if you hear them somewhere else with other people, so that those conversations reach more people. It's really, really important. Okay, I do feel a little bit like I'm on my soapbox today, and I really hope it doesn't come across like that. And I'm sort of rattling through these things. I like brainstormed them down, and now I'm like firing them out. So hopefully this is coming across in the way that I intend it. But yeah, number 5, encourage and mentor other women if you can. If you are in a position to help, do it. Like, I could literally end it there. That's quite simple. But if you're in a position to help in whatever way, do it. And whether that is, like I said, encouraging women or mentoring other women, it could mean recommending someone for a job, sharing knowledge, or just being that person who says you've got this, like when things are a bit rubbish, because sometimes that's all someone needs to hear. And if you're not in a position to mentor, just cheer her on. A simple message of encouragement can make a bigger difference than you realise. And I was going to say, especially to women, obviously it makes a big difference to men as well. But I think as women, like, we give ourselves such a hard time and we put so much guilt on ourselves about everything, like literally everything. So be there as a person that can encourage or mentor another woman through difficult times and good times, actually. So yeah, if you're in a position to help, do it. Okay, this one's huge. I touched on boundaries earlier, but there's a part 2 of that, I guess. So we spoke about like encouraging women to set boundaries, but then this one is huge. And like I said, I did speak about it a little bit earlier, but respect those boundaries. If women are bold enough and brave enough, and it's a difficult thing to do, to set boundaries, and they communicate those to you, then respect them. Like, again, quite simple. I could end there, but I won't, because that's not who I am. Women are often expected to always be on, always available, always saying yes, always putting everyone else first, always being selfless. And I would love you to join me in normalizing saying no without guilt, and like just prioritizing our own boundaries and not feeling bad about them. So support the women around you by respecting their time, their workload, and their need for rest. If they communicate boundaries to you, don't push back on them to see whether, like, check yourself as to whether you're pushing back on them. Make sure you really know what those boundaries are. If they have taken the time to communicate those to you, make sure you don't, disrespect them, basically. So yeah, that's a really huge one for me. And finally, teach the next generation. If we want real change, we have to start young. And it's a long and slow process. There's a long way to go, but we need to start young. And the more of us that are teaching the next generation, the better. So talk to your kids about equality, fairness, and respect. Show them through your actions that these things matter every single day, not just on International Women's Day, but every single day of the year. So yeah, that was my final one of how we can support women. I mean, there are a ton more, but those are the ones that I came up with. And that final one was teach the next generation, which I am really passionate about. I do with my own children. And I know lots of other amazing women that do the same thing. But yeah, the more and more of us that can do it, the better. So if you are listening to this thinking, but I do support women, then amazing. Like, I know tons of people that do, both men and women. But here's a challenge. Ask yourself, am I actually taking action, or am I just saying the right things? Because true support isn't just reposting a quote on International Women's Day. It's not just commenting, yes, queen, under someone's post. Neither of those things are a bad thing to do them, but that's not like solely what it's about. It's about what you do when no one is watching. It's how you treat women in business, how you uplift the people around you, and how you show up consistently, not just when it's trendy to do so, not just when there's an awareness day, and not just when it benefits you. So I am about to shift the tone a little bit. And while it might seem like these two topics are unrelated, they are really not. The reason I want to include them both in this episode is because true support for women, like I said just now, isn't just about lifting each other up. It's also about addressing the wider, more dangerous issues that still affect us every day. So although this feels like a big jump in what I'm about to talk about, I promise it all connects to the same mission of creating a world where women are safe, valued, and supported. And I was nervous about putting this in, and you'll understand why in a little bit. But before I go into it, I want to give a little bit of a trigger warning as well for this part of the episode. So the thing I'm about to talk about is male violence against women and recent news stories that might be distressing. So please take care of yourself. And if you need to pause or skip this bit of the episode or stop listening to this episode, that is absolutely okay. Like, please don't feel bad about that. That's absolutely fine. So yeah, I'm going to be talking about male violence against women just for a little bit, and some news stories from this week, and probably a lot of what made me want to do this podcast episode. Because when I'm talking about supporting women and making sure we lift each other up, there is something so much bigger at play than just how we can support women in business and the things I've been talking about so far. The reality is, like, the really sad, horrible reality is, we still have so far to go. And if I'm honest, there's been parts of me this week with some of the news that I've been watching and consuming that feels like we're going backwards. Like, I know we're probably not, but it honestly feels like it. And there is just so far to go. The statistics are still horrifying, and there's so much work left to do to make sure women are truly safe, that they're truly respected, and equal in all aspects of life. So this week alone, I mean, there's lots of stuff going on globally, and I'm not going to talk about that right now. But one of the things I am going to talk about is the tragic news of a former soldier who raped and murdered his ex-girlfriend, her mother, and her sister in a brutal, brutal way. And it was a horrible reminder, like the reminder that I did not want, of why I'm so passionate about the things that I'm passionate about, and why feminism and fighting for women's rights is something we need to be doing all year round. And I mean, this is just one isolated example. There are tons of things, and not just about violence against women, about tons of things. But again, I'll explain in a minute why this is something I'm particularly passionate about talking about. So this former soldier, this man who has just been charged, is my understanding, I think he's just been charged, had been influenced by a horrendously misogynistic video from a well-known figure who I won't name. I'm sure most of you can guess who I'm talking about. He was described by the judge as almost a poster boy for misogyny. But yeah, like I said, I'm not going to name him. I'm sure lots of you will know who I'm talking about. And he'd been influenced by these videos and took these women's lives in the most horrific way. He shot them with a crossbow and stabbed them to death in their own home. And he did it because he saw his ex-girlfriend breaking up with him as a personal affront. And I mean, those are the words that were used in the article. Like, I mean, I don't even know where to go from here. The depth of the violence that he inflicted, especially on women, just shows how dangerous unchecked misogyny can be. And this isn't an isolated incident. This is so much more common than we realise and that we see reported in the news. He did not see these women as human beings with their own rights. He saw them as objects, as things to control. And when they tried to break free from him, he felt entitled to murder them. And like I said, it's not an isolated incident. We see male violence against women in all its forms far too frequently. In fact, statistics show that in the UK alone, 1 in 3 women will experience physical or sexual violence in their lifetime, and 2 women a week are killed by men. This violence isn't just physical, it's also systemic, and it's deeply embedded in our culture. And it is so frightening. Like, it's frightening as a woman. It's terrifying as a mother of a daughter. It's just so embedded in our culture, and it just makes me so sad. That doesn't even describe how it makes me feel. But like, so, you know, like I said, it's not all physical. It can be from workplace harassment to street violence, from the gender pay gap to the constant undermining of women's voices. We just still have such a long road ahead of us, and one day a year isn't going to cut it. And this is why feminism and supporting women must be more than just lip service. I am so passionate, particularly about talking about male violence against women. And like I said earlier, there's so much I could talk about. I couldn't possibly put it into one podcast episode. But the reason that I've spoken about this is partly because I've seen it in the news this week. And honestly, it made me feel a bit sick when I saw it. But also, like, I mean, for all of the obvious reasons, obviously, male violence against women is horrific, but it's also deeply personal to me. And I wasn't sure whether to mention this in the podcast episode. And I don't ever script these out, but like, I write a few notes to sort of guide me. Otherwise, I'd go properly off on a tangent. And I was running through this with my husband before I started doing the podcast episode. And I was like, I don't know whether I'm going to do it. I don't know whether I'm going to include it, because I feel like, I don't even know what I felt. I just felt uncomfortable sharing it. But I think it's really important that I do. Like I said, it's deeply personal to me. And when I spoke about this thing I'm about to speak about next to my husband, I cried. Like, I actually got really upset. And I genuinely wasn't expecting myself to. I'm hoping now I've got that out of my system that I'm not going to cry whilst I'm recording this podcast. But yeah, I think that's what compelled me to do this episode, and why I get so sad about this stuff, because we still have so far to go. And realistically, what we see on International Women's Day is brilliant, and it's great, and it's worthy of celebration and all of that stuff, but it needs to be so much more than that. So the reason that male violence against women is deeply personal to me is because at 19 years old, one of my close friends was murdered by her ex-boyfriend. And like, still saying that out loud just seems wild. Like, well, not wild. Wild isn't even the right word, but it's just, these aren't just stories. So this story that I just told you about in the news, these aren't just stories that happen to other people. They are real life, and they impact people like me, like my friends, like all of us. And when I hear about these tragedies, like what happened this week, but I hear about them all the time, I always think about her. And it's always a chilling reminder that this issue is not a distant or abstract thing. It's happening in our communities, and we need to keep fighting to change that. Like I said, that happened when I was 19 years old. That was a long time ago. I'm not going to say how long ago it was, but I think we all roughly know my age. That was a long, long time ago. And I feel like we've got nowhere. Like I said earlier, I feel like we've just gone backwards. And my heart still breaks for losing her and everything that came with that. And the fact that we haven't got anywhere just breaks my heart. So we need to be having these conversations, and it needs to be so much more than just what happens on International Women's Day or in the lead up to it. So yeah, I hope, again, I still feel a little bit like anxious about what I've said there. I hope that's come across in the way that I intended it to. I am going to shift back to a lighter note and take a moment to highlight some incredible women who don't just say they support women, they live it every single day. Because I realise I've spoken about some really heavy stuff. I realise I have very much ranted. But this isn't because there's no good going on and there's no, like, people only talk about things on International Women's Day. I know a ton of people who don't do that. And I want to, I guess, kind of end this on a positive of shouting some of those out. Now, before I do want to say I could talk about so many more women in this. And like, that's great in itself, because when you can write a massive list of people that you can shout out, that is really comforting and makes you feel good. However, I can't shout all these women out because I haven't got the time, and I will forget someone and I'll feel terrible. So this is by no means an exhaustive list. And if you're not mentioned, it doesn't mean I don't think you're amazing, but I've chosen to limit myself to a handful of women who have either helped me personally or been on this podcast, and who are out there actively lifting each other up and other women up all of the time, like all year round. These women aren't just like a list of my friends that I want to shout out. Some of them I don't actually know that well. I just think the work they do is incredible. So I would like to start with Beth Fit PT on Instagram. I will tag all of these women in the show notes afterwards, so you can go and check them out. So Beth is my personal trainer, and she is bloody amazing. She is like a ray of sunshine. She is honestly the most positive person I think I've ever met. And I don't just mean the kind of positivity that tells you to just be happy and move on and all of that kind of stuff, although she does have an incredible woo when you when you exercise with her and when you do something amazing to encourage you on. But I'm not talking about that kind of positivity where it's like, let's just be happy all the time. I mean the deep, genuine belief that you can do things, that you are strong, and that you deserve to feel good in your own body. She has helped me in ways I can't even put into words, not just physically, but mentally as well. And the community that she's created around the PTs that she does and the boot camps she does and the classes that she does is just incredible. It's not just about fitness, it's about lifting women up, helping them to see their own worth, and making them feel capable in every sense of the word. So I cannot say enough good things about Beth. She is honestly amazing. She cheers women on all year round. Like I said, I'll link to her and everyone else in the show notes, so go check her out. If you live locally to me, especially, go check her out. But even if you don't, go check her out and show her some love. Give her a follow, and you might even see, I mean, I share it to my own stories, but you might even see her sharing some of my stuff. So yeah, that is my first shout out of an amazing women walking the walk all year round. My second shout out goes to Wendy Hill from Hill Start Nutrition. Wendy is my go-to nutrition, health, and hormones expert. And also she is a wonderful, wonderful friend. So Wendy has been a game changer for me. Like, I have no other way to describe it. I've known Wendy now probably for about 3 years, and she has supported me endlessly when it comes to my health, my nutrition, and navigating all the fun that comes with being a woman and hormones and heading towards perimenopause and menopause and all that kind of stuff. She specializes in perimenopause and menopause. She's an expert in it. And she is just wonderful. She's brilliant. I actually think I've known her for more than 3 years now, actually. But the best part about Wendy is she does it with zero judgment. She listens, encourages, and helps you in the most practical, supportive way. And much like I do with social media, she simplifies everything. She's a big advocate of small changes making big differences, which I absolutely have needed. Her approach is all about empowering women with knowledge, giving them the tools to take control of their health and make sure they feel heard in a world that often dismisses them. And I just love her. I think she's brilliant. She has changed, like, my health, my food, and my diet. If you follow me on Instagram and you know me or you hear me talk about it, I mean, I sometimes think I make Wendy die a little bit inside. But I cannot tell you, and she will tell you herself as well, like the difference in me and what I eat and the things I do. Like, I check the back of ingredient packets now in supermarkets. From before knowing Wendy to now has been astronomical, and she is amazing. I will tag to her in the show notes. I will also tag her podcast in the show notes, because she has an incredible podcast, which, to be honest, is very, very similar to Show Up and Be Heard. But instead of like the bite-sized tips and the simple actions around how to improve your social media, it's all about how to improve your health. And it's wonderful. They're often short episodes, so they're nice and easy to listen to. She does them in blog format as well. And she is just so, so clever, but does it in the most accessible and relatable way. So yeah, please go check Wendy out as well. All the links will be in the show notes. Okay, so my next woman that I would love to shout out is Nikki Elliott from the wonderful The Wilder Collective. And Nikki is someone who really walks the walk when it comes to women supporting women. She came on the podcast recently to talk about internalized misogyny, and it was brilliant. It was an excellent episode. I will link to it in the show notes. And I honestly think, like, internalized misogyny is like, well, I mean, I don't know, I can't say this, but I think, like, it's something we absolutely need to tackle. And it's almost like we need to tackle internalized, not before we tackleize misogyny, but it's almost like a bigger issue. Anyway, go listen to the episode on that, because we go into lots of detail about it. Nikki explains it really, really well. But I think it's one of the biggest barriers to true gender equality. Nikki dedicates her work to breaking those barriers down. She starts difficult conversations, challenges the status quo, and is driven by a genuine desire to make real, lasting change. She's not just about words, she's about action, which I am here for all day long. And I have so much admiration for her. I will link to her Instagram in the show notes, and she's also got a podcast. I really should have checked the name of this before I did it, but I think it's called Women's Business. Maybe I will link to it in the show notes anyway. And it's also absolutely brilliant. So go check that out. Yeah, Nikki is amazing. Okay, so they are my first three. I have three more, I think. To start with, I said I was going to stick it to 5, and then I ended up with 6. Like I said, I literally probably could have had about 60. But yeah, I have 3 more. So my next one is Katie Cope, who champions women-owned businesses in the most amazing way. So I first saw Katie speak at the Doing It for the Kids meetup, where she talked about why we need more women-owned businesses. And when I say need, I mean it, because when women build businesses, we create more opportunities, more financial independence, and more change. And she came armed with not just like a really empowering message of why we need more women-owned businesses, but like actual stats and facts about how much better the world would be if we had that. She then came on my podcast, to talk about this in more depth. And her passion for lifting women up in business is truly, genuinely inspiring. She is someone who gets why this matters and actively works to make it happen. You know, like the stuff that I said earlier about having the conversation. She's one of those people that has the conversations. So I will link to her Instagram in the show notes, and I will also link to the podcast episode that we did together in the show notes too, because it was a really good one. And like I said, some of the stats that she shares are mind-blowing, like genuinely mind-blowing. It is well worth a listen. Okay, so number 5 is the lovely, lovely Frankie from Doing It for the Kids. So talking of Doing It for the Kids, I want to shout out Frankie, who connects and supports freelancers or freelance parents. She connects and supports them and gives them an amazing, amazing community. She has connected me with so many incredible women, like I just said about Katie, Joe, who was on the podcast recently talking about boundaries. I only know because I went to a Doing It for the Kids meetup and asked her to come onto the membership. And actually, Frankie herself is going to come onto the membership soon as well. And she is going to be talking about why she includes why her Doing It for the Kids isn't just for mums, it's for mums and dads and parents and carers and that kind of thing, and why it's for men as well, and why men need to be part of the conversation if we really want change, which I am wholly behind. I know I have I know I only work with women, and there's reasons that I have that women only space. But I love that there's people like Frankie out there who offer the communities for everybody, because she's right. Men need to be part of the conversation. Like I said, she's going to come on the podcast and have a chat about that. So that episode will be out soon. I can't link to it in the show notes because we haven't even recorded it yet, but she will be on soon. And she's right. True equality isn't about women doing it alone. It's about shifting the entire system, and men need to be part of that conversation. So Frankie runs a membership that makes freelancing life easier for parents. And what I love is, like I said, just all that stuff just now, she really thinks about inclusivity, and not just on gender. She thinks about inclusivity on lots and lots of things. She's just a wonderful person. Like, I really like her, and I don't know her that well, so that feels a bit of a weird thing to say. But I just like everything she stands for. I like the things that she speaks about, and that she's not afraid to have those conversations. She talks a lot about maternity and paternity leave and how difficult it is to be a freelance parent. And like I said earlier, you know, those things that I was talking about how we can really make a difference. A big part of that is really having those conversations and making people aware of that. And Frankie does that in abundance. So she is wonderful. I will link to her in the show notes, obviously, and I'll also link to her doing it for the kids community as well, because it's brilliant. Okay, my final person is the lovely, lovely Lucy Hall from Digital Women. So huge, oh my goodness, I can't speak. A huge shout out to Lucy, the powerhouse behind Digital Women, which is getting bigger and bigger. Lucy has been sharing on her social media recently some incredible wins that she's getting as a women-owned business, but not only as a women-owned business, as a women-owned business that is dedicated to supporting and helping and lifting up other women. She's doing amazing, amazing stuff. I have been part of her amazing membership community this year, although not as active as I would have liked to yet, because there's lots of things going on, isn't there? But even though I'm not that active, her commitment to empowering women in the digital space is genuinely inspiring. And it's so very obvious that she means it and really believes it too. She is like the perfect example of someone who isn't just talking the talk, but actively creating opportunities for women to thrive. And I bloody love it. Like I said, she's been getting some massive wins for her own business recently, but the wins that she's been getting for her own business are going to have a ridiculously good effect on other women-owned businesses as well. And I am so here for that. It's like everything I was talking about earlier about how we can lift each other women up, how we can lift other women up. And it's just super exciting. So yeah, a massive shout out to Lucy. So, and obviously I will also tag to Lucy in the show notes and to her membership as well. Those are the women that I'm shouting out, but I do want to go back to that point. There are so many more that I could do. And please don't think if I haven't mentioned you that I don't think you're worthy of a shout out. I absolutely do. There are so many people that I could have mentioned, but I just don't have time. I'm sorry. Please don't hate me. I'm going to move on to my final thoughts before I apologise for the whole episode and scrap it. So my final thoughts. International Women's Day is brilliant. This episode is nothing against people who've celebrated it. I will celebrate it. It's nothing against people who have put out a quote post. I am here for those quote posts. I bloody love an empowering women's quote post. It's not an attack on anybody at all. International Women's Day is brilliant. It sparks conversations, it celebrates progress, and it highlights what still needs to change. But the real impact that happens in the everyday moments, and it happens when we do it year round. It happens in how we show up, how we support each other, and how we challenge the things that hold women back. So let's not wait for one day a year. Let's celebrate International Women's Day this year. Let's have a brilliant time, but then let's make supporting women part of what we do all the time, not just once a year. Thank you so much for tuning in to Show Up and Be Heard. I am truly grateful for your time and energy today. I know you've got a million things on your plate, and the fact that you are here investing your time into something that will help your business and your socials grow is something you should be really proud of, and something I am really proud of you for. Before you go, if you love this podcast and you're a woman running a small business who wants to make social media easier and business life less lonely, I've got something for you. The Boss Your Socials Club is here to bring you inspiration, accountability, confidence, and community. It's a place where we ban the word should, because we believe in bespoke advice that will work for you, your stage of life, and your business. As a member, you get a clear content plan every month, ready-to-use templates, and the accountability to actually show up. Plus, you'll have expert support and a community of incredible women who get it and want to cheer you on and support you in your business journey. Think of it like having a teeny tiny social media marketing expert in your pocket alongside a whole load of cheerleaders, giving you the knowledge, the assurance, and the confidence when it comes to posting great, engaging content on your social media platforms and showing up in a way that grows your business without the overwhelm. Whether you're just getting started or looking to take your social media to the next level, Boss Your Socials Club has everything you need. You can join for just £24 a month or save with an annual membership and get 2 months free. And don't forget, we've got a pro tier for those who want even more guidance with extra story prompts, closer accountability, masterclasses, challenges, and hot seats. There is something for everyone. You can find out more and sign up at www.BeHeardSocials.com/BossYourSocials. Thank you again for being here today, and I can't wait to catch you in the next episode. Until then, take care and keep showing up.